you're visiting all the way from New Zealand. We're Zooming. Such an awesome thing that we have technology that we can do that. And I'm so excited to have you on the show today. You are literally a water angel. After hearing your story and listening to all the things you've been doing to help in the process of healing water, I wanted to bring you on the show just so that you can share what you're doing and all of your findings and what you've been learning. So let's start off by just having you introduce yourself, who you are and your passion for water and how you got involved.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. Well, I'm a water researcher from New Zealand, and for the last 8 years, I have been what I call co-creating with water. So what that means is that when I think about water and bodies of water, I also consider myself to be a body of water. So the work in which I do with water, I never can say that I'm experimenting, because I don't like the idea of being experimented on myself. And so when I am working with water, it is in reverence for water. It's in friendship with this incredible force that most people consider just a drink or something that we wash in, and really don't think about it too much further than that. But when you consider that we're only a cut away from liquid, and an emotion away from liquid, and an exercise away from liquid, and a toilet break away from liquid, only then do we start to realize that this skin is actually a container of the most sophisticated water system on the planet. So when I talk and work with water, for me, I don't consider water as just a resource. I almost feel like it's a relative. Because if you consider that by molecular count, we're 99% water, that means there are more water molecules in our body than stars in the Milky Way. Then really water is the lifeblood of this planet. Without it, there is no life. So I'm an unusual water researcher in that I am not looking at water just on a very scientific level. I do that, but I do it also with reverence. I do it with love. I call it weaving with water. I weave science and art and consciousness together, because I often like to simplify things down. And when you look at the human body, we're water, salts, minerals, and consciousness. So for me, when I'm working with water, I'm not just working with something external to me. Whenever we drink water, the water is becoming us. So I'm actually working with something extremely special. And what is so interesting is that around about 70% of water, science believes it came from meteorites and asteroids, which means it's an alien substance. And yet, we really hardly know anything about it. It's the rebel element. It defies the laws of physics and gravity, because it expands when it cools, and it goes upwards up tree trunks. It doesn't like form, and I know a lot of people like that. And so we're working with a substance we know very, very little about. But when you start working with it in curiosity, with a childlike excitement, when you start seeing it as something incredibly sacred, as a teacher, then you start to see things in a very different way. And water has shown me the most miraculous things that I can only now describe as a type of intelligence. And I'll get into that later. But all of this work with water stemmed for me from a really horrendous car accident that I was in about 25 years ago. And we went under a 7-ton truck, rolled twice. The driver was decapitated. It was considered one of the worst accidents in New Zealand where someone survived. And I'll show you, just so people get a real kind of concept. Oh, I can't do screen sharing. You might need to disable that for me. when you
Oh,
can.
okay, hold on one sec. How do I do this? More meeting settings.
While you do that, that's fine. But anyway, so I was in this accent I'll show you soon. And I had over the course of 20 years, I had 8 operations, mostly for bowel resection because the seatbelt crushed all my internal organs. And so whenever I tried to eat, the scar tissue had grown, so I'd just be vomiting and vomiting, and it felt like I was actually in labor every day
Oh
because
gosh.
it was so bad. And so I had a lot of bowel resections. And on the last one, they found that I had blood clots in my lungs. And I was so surprised, because I really look after my body. I've never drunk alcohol, I've never done drugs, I've been vegetarian since I was 8, I've never smoked a cigarette. And so I was so surprised when I was coming around from the anesthetic and they said, look, you haven't recovered well. We found showers of blood clots in your lungs. And I was like, oh my God, and so they wanted me to go on warfarin, which is a blood thinner, and it's also doubles as a rat poison. And
Yeah.
I was a lot of resistance to that. And I was really fed the fear. And for a few months, I took it, and they checked me out. They said, look, you seem to be fine. If it was up to them, I probably would have been on it for years. But I had a friend who was a medical doctor, but also a practicing Ayurvedic medicine teacher. And he said, look, totally off the record, if you can find a really high natural source of alkaline water, emphasis on natural, not ionized, just a natural water, he said it might be able to help to stabilize the pH of your blood. So we have all these buffers in our body to keep the pH of our blood stable.
Mm-hmm.
However, my blood had started to become sticky and clotty. So I thought, wow, if all I have to do is find a high alkaline water, and maybe that will help, that would be great because that's really natural. And that was the beginning, really, of my journey where I started I was like a guinea pig myself. I was my own guinea pig of my internal health. And so I started drinking water with a pH over a 7. And for the people that don't know, although I'm sure most of your viewers would know, the pH stands for potential power of hydrogen, and it goes from a 0 all the way up to a 14. And 7 is neutral. 7 should be the pH of distilled water. So in New Zealand, the tap water, the rainwater, is around about a 7.4. So it's not hard to find. So I started trialing water between a pH of a 7.8 and an 8.4. And I did 8-week trials for each one. And I didn't really know what would happen. I didn't have any expectations, really. So I just felt maybe a bit hydrated, and that felt good. Until one day, a friend of mine said that there is this man, he has his own private water source. The pH out of the ground's 9.9, totally 100% natural. It's all, there's a whole analysis there. He's only giving it to cancer patients. He might give you some. So I went and saw him, and he gave me a month's worth to try. I was really excited because it was I'd never heard of such a high natural pH water. And it had a very different taste, and it had a slightly different kind of viscosity. It was almost a bit thicker. And so after 3 days of drinking it, I noticed a really big change relative to like a thing that a lot of people don't want to talk about, but like it's really important, and that's bowel motions. There's so many people sitting on the toilet for an hour trying to push a pebble out, and that isn't normal. Really, there's a lot of dehydrated people out there thinking that they're drinking all different kinds of juices and they're drinking different kinds of things. They just don't want to drink water because it's so boring. They hear that a lot. Oh, water it's boring. It doesn't taste like anything. But actually, it's almost re-educating people to think of water as a medicine these days in the time that we live in. And it is. To me, water really is. And there's different types of medicines of different types of water. And so I had found the right medicine for me. And so particular water, so, obviously I'd had a lot of bowel surgery. So when you start noticing that things are moving the way they should. Okay, there is something changing in this water system. This is good. And then 10 days later, I had all these bumps coming up along my arm and along my jaw that were really painful. And I didn't know what they were. And one felt particularly sharp. And although it sounds gross, I ended up getting some tweezers and I started digging in my arm and it hit something. And I got it and I pulled it out and this little shard of green glass came out. And
Whoa.
over the course of from day 10 to day 12, 27 pieces of glass came out of my arm and my jaw that had been in my body for over 20 years that went in there from the car accident. And I know they were from the car accident because the man that was in the back, that was driving the car that died, in the back of his car, he had crates of this beer in New Zealand called Steinlager, and all of the Steinlager bottles are green. And so when we rolled, I'd gone like this, and a lot of went through my arm and my jaw. But it wasn't just glass that started coming out of me. When I was a teenager, I'd got a big thorn stuck between my knuckles, and we thought we'd got most of it out. But I mean, it was really quite amazing and disgusting at the same time that it was out of me. But there was this kind of fossilized bit of twig thing that had started to work its way out of between my knuckles that had been in there for even longer.
Oh my
God.
God.
It blew my mind that water, this just drinking water alone, had managed to do something so dramatic.
Yeah.
And back then I had a wellness center. And so I wanted to see if it was some kind of fluke and that it was just good for my body or if it would help other people. And so I had told my story to a number of clients and they were like, we'd love to try it. So I ended up giving people trials and they had like a 1 liter in the morning and 1 liter in the evening, and they did it for 8 weeks.
Okay.
And I did it for 92 people over the course of 2 years on these trials.
Oh, wow.
Very, very, very healthy, to all the way to very sick, and a whole bunch of really interesting things in between, from people with fertility issues, had gone through rounds of IVF, actually got pregnant during the time that they were having this water, and people with eyesight issues. One lady had to change the prescription on her on her glasses, and another one was people were losing a lot of weight, and there was all kinds of skin issues was clearing up. There were people that had very serious depression even, which they noticed a shift and change in their mood. And so I recorded all of these. They weren't clinical trials. They were my own trials. But I did them very scientifically. And every single person noticed a change in their bowel motions very quickly. It was one of the things that nearly everybody mentioned. One thing was, I can't believe how much I'm peeing. And the other one was, I can't believe how much I'm pooping. And so many issues that people have, is that things aren't coming out. They're getting stuck and we're getting this backlog, and that's making us not feel good. Yeah. So the very healthy people found they had a lot of energy, and they started to say, well, that's the biggest thing. They noticed a lot more energy, which was really interesting. And I probably shouldn't talk too much about some of the others because I don't want to I'm not claiming anything. It's simply what they told me, but there was some dramatic healings from people who had some pretty serious diseases. And one went on a 40-day water fast, and he only drank this water, and he cured himself of something that we've all heard of before, which is a very serious disease. Yeah. So, and he's still well. So I wanted to do all of this to see if water, or a specific type of water, could actually really heal people. And I was like, okay, there's got to be more to this. And so I started to look at the ingredients, like not the ingredients, I don't like that word, the topical analysis. And so I realized that you can't actually really understand water just by looking at what is in it. Water is the ultimate solvent. And so it's always hungry, it's always picking up whatever, like minerals and salts and things like that, or whatever we put into it as well. But what it doesn't show is the more subtle things about water. And there's a whole new science where I think you've done a talk with Dr. Gerald Pollack, who's also my friend, my mentor.
Yes.
And he's a darling, and he a lot of his work actually has helped me along my way, and he's given me a lot of suggestions with my own work where I can take it more scientifically, which has been really helpful. So I started to understand that not all water is created equal. And where I was going with that is that when you're looking at an analysis and looking at how much total dissolved solids there are and all these things about the water, it actually is only telling you what's in the water, but it's not telling you anything about the water itself. It's kind of like, taking someone's blood test and saying, I know everything about that person now because I know all about what their blood type and their blood test is. But it's not that you can't say that because
just the chemistry.
That's it. It's just
only
very,
a part of the picture.
So I wanted to see how water could be so transformative and understand more about it on a subtle level, because the power, the information is always in the subtleties. It's the same with people. You can't just look at somebody and think that you know them. We have so many subtleties, so many thoughts, so many layers, so to speak. And so the approach I started to take. Here in New Zealand, the Maori, and of which I'm one, my dad's Maori, and we have a saying which says that the health of the river reflects the health of the people. And so there is a very deep connection with the water, and the water itself holds power. The Maori and many other indigenous people and ancient people believed that water was a living system, was a living being. And I wanted to look at water from many different approaches, and that was one of them. So when Masaru Emoto's work, which many people have heard of, came out, which I think his work was extremely important in that it opened people up to the connection between ourselves and water through art. Although the scientific community really weren't ready, I don't think, to fully embrace what he was showing, it's being a scientist is all about discovering something. He did discover something, and he was able to show it very visually. And I think that that's what interested me so much, is that he was able to show water's interpretation of love and hate. He was able to show water's interpretation of different emotions. And when you do that, and when you see that love can look like this beautiful hexagon, and that hate can just look like some kind of mudslide, it was easy for people to then to connect to the water inside of them, going, look what loving thoughts make me look like. Look what hateful thoughts make me look like. It was a very powerful thing that he did. And adjacent to that, there is a friend of mine who is an incredible man. He's not so well known in America, but he's quite well known in France. His name is Laurent Costa. He wrote a book called Into the Heart of Water, and he took microscopic photographs of water as well, except that his actually took on another level. So he was actually taking photographs of imagery that we can visually relate to, like actual perfect hearts and fish and faces. And I'm like, oh, okay, this is really interesting now. And And the third thing that got my work inspired was I read about a very interesting man called Thomas Hieronymus. Thomas Hieronymus was, I think, around in the earlier part of the 19th century, and he was a radionic engineer. And he went to a Parisian meat market, and he observed something very interesting. He observed that the freshly placed organs of an animal appeared to be affecting the way the frost froze on the glass behind them. For example, a heart organ placed in front of glass, the frost behind it started to take the same shape as the heart organ. Same with the kidney, same with the brain. And he made this observation, and he thought that it was the life force energy that still somehow emanated from these organs because of the blood. He said life force energy didn't just end upon death. It actually was held within the water in the blood. And it was so strong, it was impacting the frost behind it. And so that really was fascinating to me.
You're giving me chills just talking about this. So like, oh my gosh, so powerful.
It is. And so then I thought, well, I didn't have a microscope at the time, but this was 8 years ago. And so I thought, well, I have a petri dish and I have some amazing water. So I thought was, I wanted to see if water really could store information or show some imagery or do something. If I just thought something, projected a thought into the water and froze it, and I'd just pull it out and I'd photograph it, and that was my plan. Okay. So I got a petri dish and I filled it halfway up with water, and I was thinking about what I was going to do, and then I noticed there was a little bit of fluff in the petri dish. So I put my hand in to take the fluff out, but I consciously thought, I wonder if my hand will have any impact on the water's memory, because I didn't really know then if it was real or not. So I did that, I froze it, and a few hours later, I pulled it out and I held it up to the light and I took a photo with it on my phone. And I was really shocked because half of the petri dish literally had the image of a hand in it.
Oh my gosh.
Now,
you'll have to show it to us.
Yeah, let me show you. Okay, so this hand I saw. Can you see?
Not yet, but okay, there we go.
Yeah. So this was the image that I saw, the first image that I ever saw, and that was of this hand. And I showed the photo to my son, Rama, and I said, Rama, what's this? He says, oh, it's a hand, Mum. It was like, it really is a hand. I know, it's so true. And so then I thought, if water was going to be informed, probably seawater would be one of the most informed. So I went and I got a really thin layer of seawater because salt water freezes much slower than fresh water. And so I did the same thing, and I got this photo of this fish. And so you can see his fins and his
Can you open it? Can you click on it and open it bigger?
Yeah, let me see. So that's taking up my whole screen now. Can you see?
I don't think it's transferred over yet on mine. For some reason on my screen it's just showing the files. I can see all of them, but they're small.
All right, let me go into this way. See if I can do it a different way. Screen share stopped. Okay, let me try this again because you want to be able to see this. So, okay, I'm going to go here and let's see if this is any better. Can you see this?
It's loading right now.
Okay. I've done the same thing, just in a slightly different method.
Okay, so now I can see your home screen. It looks like this is just the home screen and the Zoom call link.
Oh, that's strange. Because, like, do you think it's delayed?
Okay, there we go. I think it is delayed because now I see this is the seawater.
Yeah, this is the seawater.
So okay, there it goes.
Yeah, it'll come back on again. So I think it's just there's a delay, so we'll just be mindful of that. So you can see the outline and the shape of the fish and his tail and his perfect eye and his little fins.
Oh my gosh. And this is the seawater sample.
Yeah, this is the seawater sample. And this was when I just told you. And so then I started getting really curious. So I was really interested because my freezer became my most used household appliance because it was just like, just doing this over and over and over again. I kept seeing image after image after image. And then when I started to look much deeper into the new science of water and started to understand that there are 4 phases of water. There's a liquid, solid, gas, and then a type of gel, and that's more relative to the type of water inside of our cells. And it also is the stage between liquid and ice. Mm-hmm. So I began to start photographing water in the stage of creation. So I haven't frozen water completely now for years, but what I noticed that there are 2 types of water in water, informed water and uninformed water. So water that has information freezes much quicker and is attracted to the bottom of the glass petri dish first, whereas uninformed water freezes much slower and remains liquid for longer. And now I only photograph the informed water, and it gives me more of a 3D kind of look. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to see if water could be informed by photographs of people, and if it could show images of people. So I got a photograph of a girlfriend of mine, and so I put the photograph on the table, and I put the petri dish of water on top of it for 30 seconds. And then I froze it using this technique. So I'm going to go into the screen share. Now I'm going to do it this way. So it might just take a while to load for you. But so I'll start talking about what you're going to see though. So on the right is a photograph of my friend Wendy. And on the left is the image that I photographed in the ice. Can you see it yet?
Oh yeah, that's incredible. So, and this is just to the naked eye. You weren't using any equipment. This is
every single photo I've taken is macroscopic, and every one of them taken on my iPhone. So these images are not small. And so what I think was happening, and it's my theory, I can't prove it, but I'm open to all suggestions, is that it's almost as if the water molecules are working as a collective to create imagery on the surface of ice relative to its last influence. But also, it's almost like they're working like pixels to create an image together. Mm-hmm. So they're intelligent. But so I thought, well, okay, let's see if I can find any other kind of faces. And so I've done more than this, many more than this, but this is a little collection. So first you'll see that same lady, and then beside it, this guy, his name's Igor. He was one of the scientists at the water conference that I went to last year, and he was totally great about me using his photo as an influence. But you can see that it's picked up his features. So his chin and his nose are very specific to Igor compared to that of Wendy. And to the last one, the influence was of this monk. And you can see even his robes are showing in the image beside it. And you can see it's a different shaped face, a different type of profile. It's extremely, you can see in Igor's, you can see the side of the face. It's fascinating to me to be able to like work with intelligence.
Unbelievable.
So, yeah, it really is. So then I've got my children. I've got my children involved in some of these, and so my daughter Shanti loves things to do with unicorns and magic and fairies, and so I've taught them how to do this. And one of the most amazing pictures Shanti did was it had this incredible unicorn in it, and it looks like a snapshot from the movie Frozen. So to have a look at it here, so you can kind of see that they've got the unicorn horn and his face and his eye here and his mane here, and it's like in this kind of crystal snow-like wonder world, which is really amazing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
And then I started
Actually a unicorn in the ice.
Yeah. And then she did this other one where she was thinking of unicorn horns. And so you can see, like, this is an image that looks, it was three-dimensional. These twisted unicorn horns were literally coming out of the ice.
Wow.
So there's no limit to what you can do. And so I thought, well, I'm right. I've got nothing stopping me from doing anything. So another influence I thought that I would like to try and do was to talk, just speak and see if anything would happen, because it's not visual. And so one of the things I did, I said to water, do you know who I am? And
Whoa.
this is really one of the most amazing pictures that I have is this one. So so these are my initials. And on the right is how I actually write my initials, how I link them. And in fact, has done a better job. But Veda Austin, it is exactly how I write my initials. I always link them. And this was amazing. I've actually done that test now 3 times, and each time I've got a but often it's like there's a different artist designing, but it's always the same picture. And so then I said shalom to the water, and I got this image that many people think looks like Jesus, or that looks like one of the archangels. And it's pretty amazing. So I'm like, okay, there is definitely something going on here, because it's just image after image after image.
So explain how you did this one more time. You just put water in a petri dish and you froze it, and then you just took a photo with your iPhone. That's what these are.
Right in the beginning, that was exactly my process. Now I only freeze it for a short time, and I pull it out and photograph it. But that is actually all I'm doing. I'm influencing water, and then freezing it and then photographing it on my iPhone. That is all I'm doing. And some fun suggestions for people to start observing how water freezes, because most people don't think about doing this. But I've been watching water freeze in its different stages for years. But if you get a petri dish, a glass one, never use plastic, because glass has got the silica in it, and silica is a crystal and it helps store information. And so if you start pulling the water out in different stages, like 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 8 minutes, 10 minutes, you start to see how water starts creating and designing. You start to observe these little feathers and designs that water forms either naturally or from influence. But I always think it's important for people to see what water does naturally, to appreciate exactly how amazing this work is, because I worked professionally as a water researcher for 2.5 years for these people, and my job was to show crystallographically the qualitative aspects of water. So to show what water looks like structurally coming from a tap compared to water and what it looks like structurally coming from a spring. And there are huge differences. And so I have a chart that shows what spring water looks like, and then what it looks like after it's started to go through piping and right angles, because water doesn't naturally like right angles. And when it first started, it looks like a hexagon, and then it goes to like a flower, to a leaf, to grass-like shapes, to lines, to dots, and then all the way through the different aspects of tap water, and then tap water that's been affected, spring water that's been affected by EMF, things like that, and how it's structurally destroyed. And then the way you can improve it through different things like vortexing, and to filter it with silk, and to use water, put water into a singing bowl, and then the ways we can affect water with our thoughts, with our intentions, even just holding your water bottle to your heart can make a structural difference. Potentially. So it is very powerful to observe those. I have them if you want to see them, but also mindful of our time frames. So,
yeah, no, I want to see them. Let's see the video, the pictures. These are just so fascinating.
yeah, well, actually, while we're here, what I'd love to show you is very interesting. So I printed out a Van Gogh picture, and you can see how the water on the left has completely designed it itself. So these are really, really complex, interesting images.
Wow, that's beautiful.
This is just, well, not, I don't like to say just water, but this is water designing. So then this one too. So I was going out to the source where I get my spring water from, and I took a photo of the vineyard that it's nearby down the bottom. And so you can see like all of the incredible, it's basically like a mirror image. It's truly the water has done this almost from memory, because the water itself was running underneath this in a huge aquifer. So it's really remarkable.
This is just, I mean, this is the most beautiful art. The water is literally making art.
It is. So this is the degradation of water. So I've written it in as far as from kind of an emotional level. So this beautiful image here is very silvery, but you can see it looks like a sand dollar, and it's an. So this is water that has been literally taken directly from a spring, and so this here is water in good health. You can see it's starting to. It's not quite as formed. It's not quite as what I call like these beautiful feathery star hexagons, but it still has form and shape, and it looks more like a flower. So that's already gone through a few right angles. So the next one along is declining health, and that is water that looks more like a leaf. It's gone through more piping. And then the stress, you can see it's now becoming more of a grass shapes, and that is water that has gone through even more piping. So all the way down to feeling pain, this is tap water, this is municipal tap water, this is the kind of images I would see in pretty much nearly all municipal tap water. It's like, just got this jumble of lines and dots, and it's not ordered or structured. And then tortured is water that's been sitting next to a 4G tower for 15 minutes, and brain dead was sitting next to a 4G tower for half an hour. These were in excellent health. So they went from excellent health to these jumbled, thick masses of mess. And a flat line is microwaved water, water that was microwaved for a minute, went from excellent health to this, just, it's almost completely, shapeless. And then to improve it, which is a much more happy picture, so you go from the worst of the worst to starting to using a vortex machine. So the vortex machine, you can also use just a spoon, sometimes just, moving the spoon around in the shape of an 8 can help to reinvigorate water. So, or putting it in a blender also creates that kind of vortex shape. But you can see it's just starting to get more movement back. Circulation returns. So you can see it's got some movement back in it. And I think that one was from putting it into, I think that was the vortex machine, but I also used infrared light, because infrared light helps to expand the 4th phase of water, which is the water which has more electrical negative charge. It absorbs more light. It has a different viscosity and a slightly higher pH. And then when memory returns, you can see there's this cute little flower that's come back up here, and that's the memory of its good health. So water essentially has a memory of its original blueprint, and you can see it starting to come back in this image that was with infrared light, as well as, I think I might have put that one into a Tibetan singing bowl and played it as well. And so that made a huge structural difference. These bottom ones are all through emotional connection. So clarity returns, you start to see this beautiful leaf form. There's more color in it. It starts to have more natural formations. So that was through my intention of like holding the bottle to my heart and like giving it love. And freedom returns, I said a Hawaiian prayer, essentially in English, meaning, I'm sorry, please forgive me, I love you. And that creates an image which is starting to be reminiscent of water when it was in really good health. Love received, which is the one beside, you can see beautiful, these gorgeous hexagon shapes come back, and there's a lot of them. That was, I did a test where I asked, about 64 people partook in this from around the world. I had a petri dish I left out, and they all sent love to it over the course of a day. And it went from really sad looking tap water all the way to this beautiful image. And health returns was when my children and I sent love to the water, but also love to each other. And you can see that it has formed back into this beautiful hexagon, and it has healed. So water, it seems, it has the ability to self-heal and has a memory of health. And when you consider, again, I'll say it again, by molecular count, we're 99% water. I really believe that these images are very helpful in the understanding of water, but also probably more importantly, really helpful in the understanding of us as human beings and our internal power and ability to heal ourselves and stop seeing ourselves as solid all the time. I mean, we're looking at each other with our 4th phase water eyes. 99% water is the eye lens. And every time we have a deep emotion and tears coming out, it's water. It's water coming out of us. We leak. We're a container of something very special. And if we start really looking at the human body much more as a water system, not mechanical, but moving, a force, it has a force. We have a force inside of us, and it is beyond belief, and we just do not even comprehend, I don't think, how incredibly powerful the water within us really is. I think we limit ourselves way too much, and we are one drop. We have many drops in this body. So, we have a lot we can work with. And so if water can go up this way and all these images, and so one of the things that Dr. Gerald Pollack suggested that I do was to do the repeat studies. And so I've done a lot of repeat studies to see if water will show imagery repeatedly, to see if it has this sort of a, so I guess it's the most scientific thing you can kind of do to see if it will repeat. And so I've used lots of different things. Music is one of them, because I also think music can be a medicine. And
Yes.
music can play the same song repeatedly. So for some of them, I simply put petri dishes in front of a speaker and played the song and did them all around about the same time. And then some of them I did at separate times. So I'll show you a couple of them. So for example, this one, I used this image of an Egyptian tablet, and as the test. So this was printed out, and I put 4 petri dishes of water on top of the printout of this Egyptian tablet. And you can see in each one, it shows almost a different perspective of the Egyptian tablet.
Gosh.
It's almost as if it's from different angles. Like I said, water, it's almost as if there's a different artist designing each time, but it's showing the same thing. And this is not me.
Almost like people. It's almost like people. We can be looking at the same photo and seeing it from a different perspective. I mean, this is unreal.
Amazing. So my point with this is really that water is able to show us a type of intelligence. So after this one, we go, I mean, I've done so many. This little guy up here. I did the sound of Om. So you can see that it kind of has these, all of them have these spiral shapes. And I used tuning forks. And these were taken at different times. So sometimes months apart. And so you can see they all have something very similar, all very much in common. And then I did love. So this one was an emotion that I projected into the water. And love always shows beautiful hearts. And it's beautiful because you can see the heart within it, but water is using the emotion of love and making it human. So for that's for us. When we see a picture of a heart, we know what that means for us. But water appears to have an intelligence enough to show imagery that is relative and emotional for us. So I then did I wrote the word alien, and I put a petri dish of water. This was different times, so hopefully let me make it bigger.
Veda, do you think at all that there could be a possibility that since you're the observer and you're the one doing the study, that the water is also imprinting the information of the way that you see love? So you see it as a heart, or the way that you view it?
I think it's definitely possible. I don't disregard I have a relationship with water, and I've built a relationship with water, so that now it's like I just have all this imagery which is relative to me. However, I have had a colleague of mine do some work herself, and I have one of her images to show as well, which is encouraging, because I do really think at some point I'd love to do a big kind of seminar where I can teach people how to do this, and we can all see if we get similar images for similar words. So I'm actually these images were from the word alien. So they one is like a different artist, but showing all in the same profile. This big head and a face. This definitely looks like an alien. And this one looks like a crystal skull from Indiana Jones. And, you know, so this was I will do this. No, I don't think I've ever shown this on a podcast. This one is the emotion of anger and frustration.
Wow.
It thickens, the water actually thickens and looks like kind of concrete from really negative feelings and emotions, and also very similar look to water exposure.
And it's like it's rigid, like there's no movement in it. Like you said, concrete. It's almost like that emotion is like stuck energy or something.
It's a great description. So I started thinking, well, let's have a look at some. So we know that love charts, but I also did a repeat study on stress, and stress always shows spikes like this. But so then heartache, and so it took stress and the heart and put them together. So I'm learning the language of water. There is one. It's slow and gradual, but water appears to be able to pull things together and actually tell a story, tell us intelligence. I have, where are we? This is one of the most, I mean, there's just so many things I could show you, but one of the things I also have done is through saliva. So I spat into a lot of petri dishes, which is not very ladylike, but there you go. And what I've observed is that the last word you say, for example, the last word I said before I did this was the number 8. I was telling a lady to put the number 8 in her wallet because a friend had told me to do that, help her attract more abundance or something, but that part doesn't really matter. The last word I said was 8, and I enlarged it here, and you can see it's almost as if the number 8 was stamped into the bubble of the saliva. So this is frozen saliva. And things that Jerry Pollack asked me to do was do a survey with 25 different images and just simply say on the survey, what does this image look like to you? And friends sent it out. I was not part of it, so no one knew it was coming from me. And so I think 298 people did the survey, and there were lots of 25 different images, and 85% of people were able to recognize the images for what they were, and 100% of people recognized 3 of them. And if you consider how subjective art can be, and people are looking at these images and able to recognize them, and these were designed by water. So I think water is not just like just the force. I think water is like the architect of all nature. I think it gives form and design to all living things. So it understands form and very, very well, and is able to actually show us this through in this in-between space. And nature always hides her secrets well. And so space between liquid and ice, as water is beginning to form, this is where the divine architect is designing. And it designs in liquid crystal, where we can see it in a way we've never seen things before. Gosh. So it is truly remarkable. And, you know, I'll show one of the last images, which was where I was crying because I was cutting onions. And there's always a petri dish nearby. So I was like, water, and I just let some drops go in, and I didn't know.
I was going to ask you if you ever took a image of teardrops.
Yeah, I'll show you what it looks like. So now I'll move this. Oh yeah. So this was the image on the left, and it's just like an iris. Wow. To the image on the right, which is an iris. I mean, you can literally see the pupil.
Wow.
So it's, yeah, I mean, and then I cut my finger once and I just froze some blood. And this was years ago. This one was actually frozen solid rather than that in-between stage. But you can see it's almost as if I've highlighted it with a pen or something, the heart at the bottom. But I haven't. This was exactly how it formed. And my daughter at the time, when I showed her, she said, I think it's because you're so loving
Oh, oh, I love that, Veda. That's so sweet.
Uh, you know, but this is the one my friend did. So she puts a petri dish of water beside a fruit bowl that had apples in it, and this is nice because you can see Laura's that you can see the apple, you can see it, how big it is in comparison to the petri dish she used.
Jeez.
And this isn't in Seattle, so this I wasn't anywhere near her when she did this. I was not influencing it, so she did this herself, which was really cool. And in this, it's totally frozen. It's not taken out of the freezer in the way that I do it. So people can just put a thin layer of water in, influence it in some way, and pull it out and see what happens. I would just recommend using about 20 millimeters of 20, yeah, about how much? Yeah, just a thin layer anyway.
Mm-hmm.
A thin layer. Don't want to use too much, otherwise you just can't see as much because
Yeah.
you want it to be a thin layer. So you want it to be about 10 mils of water.
Okay.
So showing in the petri dish. So if you use 20 mils of water, that's about all you need in a petri dish. Just don't much. That's where people get frustrated when they're filling in water up too much, usually too much.
Gotcha. Yeah. I have so many questions. So actually, one of my first questions is about the water you were drinking from this well, and you said it was a pH of 9.8. Yeah. 9.9. So there's a lot of questions about pH of water and how pH alkaline water does not equate to an alkalized system. So I want to know your thoughts on that, and also maybe is there something, because there's machines that can split the molecules and then create artificially alkaline water, and then there's the alkaline water that we're actually getting from the earth. And in my opinion, I think that there's a huge difference in those two things, but I want to hear your opinion on that and why you thought it worked.
Yeah, I just did I did a podcast a couple of weeks ago with a lady who's a medical medium, and one of the big things we talked about was the difference between natural alkaline water and ionized water. And I've done studies on that, and I personally, and this isn't anything personal against anybody that likes ionized water, but my personal preference is that I don't like it. I don't like it because it's not natural. For me, what I've observed is that structurally, ionizing water is destroyed structurally. So I'm not talking about pH. I'm not talking about the ORP, which is the oxidation reduction potential. I'm not talking about all of the benefit that people talk about for ionized water. I'm actually talking about the structure. So the water structure is very important. So when you look at spring water and you can see these beautiful patterns that it forms, it means the water is not in trauma.
Yeah.
When you electrocute something, which is the process is electrocuting things, it's the same as, when you go to have that electrolysis done to remove hair, it's the same kind of process. It's an electrolysis. So that is designed to permanently destroy hair follicles, permanently. The process of ionization began from, most people don't know this, but in the very beginning stages of the people finding out about ionization wasn't because of the medical stuff, wasn't just formed in Japan where people were looking at the pH of water and comparing it to Hunza water, which is where the people who live the longest in the world are, and they base that on the fact that they drink a very amazing glacial water. That came later. Actually, there were some Russians that were digging in the Arctic tundra for oil, They were drilling in the Arctic tundra for oil, and what they discovered is that ionized water helped them to basically break through the compacted soil much quicker and to help clean their machinery. That was the very beginning stages before any of the health benefits. And then after that, then people started, so some scientists like Thingy Flanagan, they went to up in the northern Pakistan where the Hunza Valley is, and they were observing and taking records of what made the water these people that were living up well into their hundreds were drinking. And now what they've discovered is that it has a negative charge, it has a negative ORP, it has a higher pH, it also has exclusion zone that anyone that wants to know more about can go to the talk you did with Jerry Pollack. It's kind of like if you think of your body as a walking solar panel, a walking liquid solar panel. We need light. It charges our cells, and infrared light expands it. But glacial water is the stage between liquid and ice. It's in the stage of melting. So it also has very interesting different properties than regular water. So then there's some Japanese scientists went to see if they could recreate that kind of water in a lab. They found the process of ionization helped to create some of those, but stable. So ionized water, I've done a lot of studies. The pH drops extremely quickly within 20 minutes usually. So if it's exposed to air, at the longest, it will last maybe half an hour for that high pH. But when I've taken photographs of water structurally, so I've taken photos of pH 7.7, 8.7, and 9.7 naturally, and then the same thing done with the ionizing machines. The difference is night and day. Natural pH water with a higher pH taken from a spring shows geometry, it shows structural integrity. Water that has been taken and artificially created shows, it looks like anger and frustration, almost identical. Because the structure is, it's the water thickens upon stress. It thickens in these images that I'm looking at. So for me personally, because I've looked into the difference between water with a higher pH naturally and water with an unnatural high pH, it's very concerning. Most spring water also have a negative ORP, which means that it's an antioxidant rather than an oxidant. So without getting into all that, because that's very long and drawn out, I don't believe that it's all about pH. I think it's good to have, if you can get a water that's not acidic, I think that's still better for the body. But you don't have to go so extreme. I was fortunate that I found the water that I needed that healed me. Yeah. There was something about it, but I think then stop and think, like what Tesla says, you know, if you want to know the secrets to the universe, look at frequency and energy vibration. And it's like an opera singer sings, I can sing a very high note and break glass. It was almost as if the frequency, the vibration of that water went into my body, and literally my body was singing, and they had this orchestra going, but suddenly just the right note came up.
Yes.
Literally pushed all the artificial things out of my body.
There was resonance. There was resonance happening.
Vibration and resonance. So you'll find the water that works for you. And I think it's more about structure and negative charge than it is about pH. We can get a little fixated on that. But I do like a higher pH personally. I think it has a slightly different taste. Usually it has certain minerals to make it that higher pH. That I for the body. It's like bicarb, just a simple bicarb. I mean, people say, oh, if you just want high pH water, just put a teaspoon of bicarb.
Yeah.
And you can. And bicarb's good, actually. But when you can find all that naturally. It also has
Yeah.
a whole of minerals, and it's just very special. But you know that there are, I actually think, I mean, if you actually look at it on in a different way, and you think that all this water has come from outer space, and all these asteroids hit the world in different places, there are sacred waters around the world that people recognize. They have healing properties, like Lords and various different places. So there probably are various different healing types of waters around the world, and they are very specific to their region and have the right things for the people of that place that are born. So, I can talk, I see things from lots of different perspectives, but I
Yes.
think we all have our own song. Our songs change with a change of perception. Say big changes within us when we change our song, our vibration. By song, I mean we're all giving off a different kind of energetic tone. And I think it's like, you know how a spider weaves a web?
Yeah.
And at the very end of the web, someone can brush past it. The spider knows something happened, but it doesn't know what it is because it hasn't quite seen it yet. So it's like the liquid part of us is like the spider, and the web is like the water that is in the air that is still connected to us. So we can feel energy through the liquid air that we still have, is still part of us.
Yeah.
That we just how we feel energy and vibration. And so for me, when I think about things that vibrate, it gives off a tone and a frequency. So that's like our song. And when we shift into a new resonance or have a huge change of perception, then our sound, our tone changes too. And the water moves into different new patterns. And then that's why when we notice suddenly people that used to love our song, so then we changed our song, they don't like it anymore. They sort of
Right. We're not resonating anymore. There isn't a resonant frequency anymore. Yeah, that is so interesting that you said that, because it's so true how, like they say, misery loves company. Someone who's in pain is going to resonate with another person who's in pain, and then they're going to attract each other. But then that one of those individuals vibrates out and they're in like a higher frequency state, and they just don't match, and they're not resonating in their frequency anymore. And then it's like there's dissonance, and then there's discord as well, and they're like, well, we can't be friends anymore. Something happens, right, where it's like the relationship isn't what it used to be. It's so powerful, that resonance you're talking about.
Yeah, but that's the music thing. Sometimes when I remember being a teenager, being miserable at different times, God knows all kinds of stuff, and I would listen to sad songs and just wallow in that sad song and that sad song. I couldn't hear it again. And so often that's the power of music. When you think that's how whales communicate, far distant from the ocean, through sound and through music. And sound travels faster through water than through the air. So that's how come we get goosebumps when we hear music that just moves us and touches us. The water is like expanding in our body and pushing all these little bumps up, going, because it feels. And if you think about how you have the power to shift. And even when you're like driving and you can be thinking about the mortgage and the children, energy can be like, oh, it's just like, oh, one of those days. But then all of a sudden your favorite song will come on the radio, and you're like, oh, and you turn it up, and then it immediately shifts your energy.
Yes, your frequency changes. I think about that with any type of music I listen to now. If the message of that song is something that's not a positive message, something that, like you're talking about, that sad music, that upset music, that angry music, I always think about that it's singing over me, and it's tuning my cells to that frequency. It's tuning the water molecules, that structure inside of me, and it's actually restructuring my body, the 98 98.9% water molecules in my body are being structured in this moment based on the choices of the song that I'm listening to. Or I mean, but then we can go so deep into just the words we're saying and how that structures the water inside of us. And you just showing us all those images, it's so clear that we can either create health or disease based on the words and the thoughts we're thinking, because we are imprinting, you're sending that information, we are informing the molecules in our body with that message. It's just, it's so liberating in a way to realize that we have the power over our own health. I don't want to say power, maybe that's not the best way to describe it. We have a choice with our health.
That's the thing we miss. We are the power. It's not ego, it's from truth. Yeah. We always talk about returning to source. We are source. The source, when you think about going to the water source, we are a water source. Every living thing is a water source. And so that's where real connection can happen. It's where when waters come together, that is creation. That's how babies are made. That is, we'll think about everything to do with co-creation and procreation and life. Everything is within fluid. And we can do a whole nother 2-hour thing on that, on informed water within the human body and procreation and life, because that is really incredible. But anyway, I have over 10,000 photos, so that's part of the thing where people can't get their head around it. And I'm not trying to convince anyone. I'm here to share the message, to share the work. But even if you see it as art and you see the complexity, and then get your head around the fact that this was designed by water. Yeah. Incredible new revelation. And I think now is the time, because I think that water truly is a force. And it's found a way, just like in Charlotte's Web, where the spider created human words for the people to read. I think water has found a way to reach us, to show us, to teach us, to remind us of what we are. And that water is transparent, just as we should be. Water doesn't judge. Water will go into the mouth of an ant as easily as it will of us. It doesn't know color. It reflects color. It simply is. And it is life. And that, I think, is the most powerful thing that we can take away from the fact that when we die, the water within us evaporates and the salts and I think that is very reassuring, because one of the things we see in this world reincarnate every day is water, always in one of it. So it's the
most renewable resource on the planet or in the world. The universe is water. It's constantly recycling and renewing itself. And if that's what we are as water, then we're being renewed and recycled. And it's just so beautiful. Like I could talk about this all day long and never get bored of it. It's so magical and it's just exciting. I'm just so excited to have a soul sister that's so excited about it like I am too. I love the work that you're contributing to the world and helping us understand this at a higher level, Veda. Thank you. I just want to recognize the beauty within you for you to take this time and educate us on this. It's so incredibly powerful. And I am incredibly grateful for you. Thank you for all that you're doing. If people want to know more about you and the work you are doing, what's the best way to locate your research?
It's my name, just on my website, VedaAustin.com.
So okay.
There's tons of videos too. I've even videoed water forming and different things so you can see it working. And also on Facebook, there's a professional page, I think it's Veda Austin at Water Researcher. And but you can see the link there. It's on my that's on my website. So.
Please subscribe to Hydrate on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your preferred podcast app.